Risk. It's a part of life. But in today's pleasure-seeking world, some people take risks just for the thrills which come from defying the odds and beating them. Trusting in their own ability, some people put their lives on the line for the sheer excitement and gratification of taking on a challenge, and the stakes can be high. One small mistake can be fatal, and that thrill is only for the moment. Then it's on to bigger risks, so the appetite is never quenched. In contrast, when God calls Christians to risk, He calls us to something far greater than just taking a chance. He calls us to step out in obedient faith, trusting Him to show us the right path and then believing in His ability to keep us from falling as we move in that direction. If we hesitate, or if we refuse to obey, the stakes can be equally as high. Jesus once said, "Risk your life and get more than you ever dreamed of. Play it safe and end up holding the bag." These timeless words not only hold the secret for discovering great joy here in this life, but they're also the path for securing eternal rewards in the life to come. Hi, I'm Mary Starrett. For the next few moments, I'd like you to join me on a journey to discover what it means to take one of the most meaningful risks in life, adoption. Life is full of risks, but this is a risk, adoption, that has eternal consequences. And it's one of the few mission fields we can participate in without ever leaving home. Throughout the next few moments, you're going to meet several people who have been touched by adoption. One individual who was placed for adoption, another person who placed her child for adoption, and a family going through the process of adoption right now. I personally know the power of adoption. More than 30 years ago, I made a difficult and painful decision to place my child for adoption. While it was a difficult and painful decision, it was a decision I never regretted. Christian Family Adoptions is a ministry that takes families, children, pregnant women, and helps them throughout the whole process, taking children who would never have a chance at a home and a future, and giving them a future and a hope.
I was placed for adoption when I was 9 days old. My brother had been pestering my parents for probably close to 8-9 years that he wanted a baby sister. My parents were not able to have any more children because my mother was diabetic. They decided that adoption was a route, which is risky at that point in time. There were not a lot of adoptions. People didn't talk about being adopted, and then they decided to take the risk. My biological mother was 25 years old when she gave birth to me. She had 4 children by 4 different men before that. She felt that my father was not going to leave his wife as he had been promising her, and so she placed me in adoption. She had alcohol problems at that time, as well as my father did. As the story unfolded of how their lives were, it was a radical difference. My adoptive parents took me out and gave me a chance at something different than what the others had. I kept in and out of touch with my biological mother. We saw each other maybe one other time. She wrote me saying that the only good thing I have ever done in my entire life is to put you up for adoption. The moral environment that I was brought up in changed a direction. It changed a life. So it was a risk well taken, and hopefully in the end I can look at the Lord someday and say it was a good thing. You know, some of these younger girls who are pregnant, the opportunity that they have to bless someone else, most of all bless this child, they are really giving them an opportunity to flourish beyond what they ever could have imagined. They'll be blessed because of it too, because they were willing to let go. To me, it's impossible to look at these kids and not have your heart just break over the lost opportunities in their lives, in the church, in God's kingdom. There's so much there, but it needs the soil of these families that Christian Family Adoptions offers. They have the best possible families for these girls to put their babies into. My biological mother had no idea when she gave me up for adoption that I would go on to have 4 children and go on to be able to do and experience and to touch and reach the people that I have. But she knew that she was making a choice for something better, at least an opportunity for something better.
It started when I was in a place of a big compilation of all these different stresses from my mom running away from our family. We had 13 kids. That just tore my world apart because she didn't have any last minute, sorries or any explanations. She just disappeared. The first 3 years of high school, I was numb and felt very abandoned and very unloved. I had lost a lot of my own self-value and worth. By the time I was 26 years old, I had been through Bible college and couldn't handle it emotionally from being abandoned by my mom and coming from that large family and just having to just sort of scrap around for what I had. And I remember I wanted to be a school teacher. I met a guy who actually supported me in that, and I just needed love and acceptance, and he offered that to me, but both of us were just so lost. I ended up getting pregnant by him, and I was a virgin and had never imagined ever having a relationship that would, be a crisis relationship. Then I became very extremely focused on this child and wondering how could this child have a better life than I've had. My sister, she knew a couple who had adopted a child, and this child was half black and half white, and so would my child be, and also had 2 biological children, and also had an African-American child. And so I thought to myself, there's no question in my mind that this is a family that should raise my child. Had my sister call them, and she set up where I would go out there and have dinner with them. They were a little taken back by me because they had not considered adopting another child, and I said, I just feel like my baby needs to be raised in your home. And they were like, whoa, hold on a minute, we need to pray about this. They said something about, why don't we set a date of May 15th, and then they called me within 2 days later and said, oh, we're not gonna wait, let's just do it. And they had such a peace about it. So I packed my bags and I drove out there and I lived with them for the whole course of the pregnancy. There were never any expectations on their part for me to follow through with what I'm doing. They'd always say to me, if you change your mind at any point, you're more than welcome to raise your own child. And I'd always tell them, no, this is your child. We were getting ready for me to have the baby. Dory had been my Lamaze coach all through my whole pregnancy. And when Colton finally came out and the doctor was holding him, I'll never forget that moment, because he said, who would you like me to give this child to? And I said, give him to his parents. And that seems like it was so hard for me to say, should have been so hard for me to say, but it was the biggest joy that the Lord had allowed me to feel in the whole process, because I knew that at that moment that Colton's life was so important to me and to him and to Merv and to Dory, because Colton was a tool that the Lord used in order to bring me back to him. bringing Colton into the world as a gift to Mervyn Dory as a son who now is 12 years old and loves the Lord with all his heart. He's being, I feel, prepared for something that the Lord has for him, which will offer our world and those in our world something that is unique, like a shining star that is just shining brighter than so many others because of the fruit of how all of us have come through me entering into a season of obedience to the Lord and following through with it and deciding that I didn't care what others thought of me, I just wanted what God wanted.
We have 2 boys and a girl, 11, 9, and 6. And after we had the 3rd child, we kind of had this idea or notion that, well, maybe our family is complete, but not quite. We felt that even if we didn't have more of our own natural children, that we really wanted to be able to adopt a child. The reason that we felt we wanted to adopt a child maybe at some point was that we just desired so much to be able to provide a loving, stable Christian home to a child that was in need. Something just really clicked and our hearts were stirred, and we just thought, this is the time, this is when we're ready. We're ready now to really look at adoption for real. And as we did that, we got excited and we were just pressing on to this adoption thing. We got the paperwork, and we filled out the applications, and we talked to Christian Family Adoptions. And as we started talking to them, reality kind of set in, and we started realizing, hey, this can be kind of scary. You know, these kids, we don't know if moms had prenatal care. We don't know if the child was exposed to drugs. If they were, usually it's more than one. All of the things that could happen with that child, especially knowing that they were going to be brought into our home with our own children, and that was a risk. I mean, it's a risk to really think about that, but the Lord just placed a burden on our hearts that we needed to do something about the conviction that's there.
It is concerning at times to read the profiles of some of these children and think of the things that things that can go wrong. And going through the training, I mean, they're very upfront about the risks that your family could face or the hazards, and it's scary sometimes. But still, I've got to believe that God's big enough to handle all this. It's not me, and that's the only way that we can proceed is on God. Filling out the paperwork, we did it fairly quickly, I think, as far as many people do. But then you start applying and you wait, and you apply and you wait and see what the responses are on the different children. And so far we haven't had any hits yet. But.
Right. We started the process at about the same time as 3 other families did that we know. And so we saw one family after another going to committee. One child is awarded here, another child is awarded there, and here we still wait. We haven't even been selected to go to committee for a child. And sometimes you kind of start wondering, well, what is wrong with us? That child's bulletin maybe isn't even out yet. So we just have to trust and wait that when that one comes, it's going to be in our home, and it's going to be just the way it's supposed to be. Tears and hardship and blessing all mixed together, just like with the rest of our children.
It's easy to focus on adopting, getting a child, but focusing on the goal, that's what's going to keep us in the process, and that's all God asks.
It's not just like going out and doing something for thrills. It's not going out and doing something because you're being self-seeking and you just want to get another child, or you want another hand around the house to have them do something. You're talking about taking a child, and you're talking about being able to shape and mold them and raise them for Christ. It has an eternal perspective.
Some people are called to be great evangelists. Some people go to Africa and minister to people who have never heard about Christ. But I can have another child in my family. That's another soul, and it's going to be in God's kingdom for eternity.
You can see why Christian Family Adoptions is such an important ministry. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has prepared in advance for us to do." Well, you might be asking, how can I clearly recognize the path of obedience God is calling me to? How is God calling me to risk? Ask Him to show you, and don't be surprised if what He shows you seems like a huge task, much bigger than you'd expected. It will take stepping out in faith, trusting in God's ability, not yours. If you sense the call of God on your life, step forward, risk. Through faith, God calls ordinary people like you and me to take extraordinary risks for His sake. He will give us the strength. God will never call us to a task without also providing the grace to accomplish His will. The Apostle Paul reminds us that it is God who works in us to will and to act according to His good purpose. You can support Christian family adoptions by supporting them financially, prayerfully considering adoption for your family. You can get involved because the life of a child depends on it.